Recently, Pam Bondi in the Trump Department of Justice has said they are running an investigation into James Comey and John Brennan's career as the respective FBI director and the CIA head during the Obama administration, and in the case of Comey, the first year of the Trump administration.
There is a clear case to prosecute former Obama CIA director John Brennan, and I'm going to lay it out for you.
But was there intelligence that said that the Trump campaign was colluding with Moscow during their campaign?
There was intelligence that the Russian intelligence services were actively involved in this effort, and having been involved in many counterintelligence cases in the past, I know what the Russians try to do. They try to suborn individuals.
It is hard to believe that here we are 8.5 years afterward, we're still going over this ground that has been, I think, fairly well and exhaustively plowed.
They are very angry about this, but let's just review why there might be some culpability. Take John Brennan. He was a big proponent of waterboarding and enhanced interrogation under George W. Bush's administration and the things that went on in Guantanamo. I'm not going to comment on whether they were right or wrong, but he flipped to condition himself to go into the Obama administration, and then he attacked the very president that he had served, George Bush. Then he began sounding off about Islam, religion of peace, jihadism is not a violent act, to condition himself further to be appointed by Obama, which he was, eventually as CIA director. But then he started lying. He always probably lied, but flagrantly so. He said before Congress and the media there wasn't one civilian killed by Obama's targeted assassination program via predators on the Afghan or Pakistan border. Actually, there were 50 or 75 innocent people he was caught in that lie. 3 years later, he went before the Congress, and there was information that he had been tapping his CIA, the staffers for the Senate, to get into their computer. He not only lied about it, he did so emphatic. We would never do that. That's horrible. Then he was forced to say, yes, I lied. In both cases, there were no perjury charges, nothing.
Matt Gaetz, first Trump's pick for Attorney General, breaks it down.
5 years in prison for lying to Congress. And just in case you think these cases never get prosecuted, they do in very high-profile ways. Lying to Congress is a crime under 18 U.S.C. 1001, which makes it illegal to knowingly and willfully make any false, fictitious, or fraudulent statement or representation in any manner within the jurisdiction of the legislative branch. The lie must be material. It must be made knowingly and willfully. The law applies when testifying under oath or providing information to congressional investigators. Violations can result in fines and up to 5 years in prison.
The piece de resistance for John Brennan was in October 2020, on the eve of the second and critical presidential debate. Joe Biden was in trouble. People were furious about this laptop, 10% that he'd been giving money. He was crooked. People wanted to hear. He had no excuse. So what happened? Anthony Blinken, his future Secretary of State, campaign aide, called Michael Morrell, interim CIA director at one point, said, round them up. So 51 quote-unquote intelligence authorities swore that the laptop had all the hallmarks of Russian information. Notice the words, all the hallmarks, escape clause, of Russian information, not disinformation. But that's what they meant. So what happened in the debate? Trump went right after Biden and said that laptop is real. It shows that you're a crook. It shows that your son is a miscreant. And Joe Biden's, how dare you? 51 intelligence authorities swear that it's a product of Russian espionage. Only you and Rudy Giuliani believe that. And it was effective.
You were getting a lot of money from Russia. They were paying you a lot of money, and they probably still are. But now, with what came out today, it's even worse. All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of money that you were raking in, you and your family. And Joe, you were vice president when some of this was happening. And it should have never happened.
Later, a poll showed, the Technometrica poll showed that if people had known that it had been authenticated, and by the way, that laptop was sitting in the hands of the FBI and adjudicated to be authentic and not released to the public at a time when James Comey, Christopher Wray's FBI, was partnering with Twitter and Facebook to suppress any news story that was accurately reporting that the laptop was authentic.
think you owe an explanation to the American people. Regardless of me, I think you have to clean it up and talk to the American people. Maybe you can do it right now.
General Michael Flynn, who we frequently had on this program, was prosecuted for this crime. Michael Cohen lied to Congress and spent time in prison for it. Roger Stone was prosecuted and on his way to prison in Jessup, Georgia, before President Trump relieved him of that sentence through a commutation. Martha Stewart was actually acquitted of insider trading, but convicted and jailed for violating this law regarding her false statements. So it does happen.
John Brennan finally accused Donald Trump of being a Russian traitor. He said that after Donald Trump spoke in Helsinki about Russian-American relationships. He said that he is treasonous.
I think it's a disgrace. And I say that.
When he said that, I think we all thought, well, wait a minute. Donald Trump told the Wagner Group in Syria. He upped the sanctions on the oligarchs. He approved offensive weapons to Ukraine that Obama had canceled. Russia didn't go into Ukraine under the Trump administration. It had invaded Ossetia under Bush. It went under Ukraine under both Biden and Obama, but not under Trump. He told the Germans, don't cut a deal with Putin on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. He got out of an asymmetrical missile deal. He was the hardest president that we've had against Russia. So what was John Brennan doing?
Brennan talked to NBC last week.
Nobody from the FBI or Department of Justice or CIA has reached out to me at all. So I am just waiting to, hear more about what this might be.
By 2023, we all knew that Hunter's laptop was real. It wasn't Russian disinformation. So at the time, we were investigating how a group of over 50 former intelligence officials were leveraging the imprimatur of their security clearances, their access to classified information, to lie to the American people about the Hunter laptop. I asked Brennan how he assessed, wrongly, that the laptop had all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. He made a huge mistake in the answer. He said, quote, I tapped into my understanding and my knowledge of Russian counterintelligence activities and influence operations and made a determination at the time when I was asked to sign the letter whether or not I would agree to sign it, which I did.
Here's what he was doing in 2 or 3 of the most significant scandals of the last 50 years. He was at the center. You could make the argument that the Russian collusion hoax almost swung the election to Hillary Clinton. You could argue that. You could argue that the Mueller investigation, based on that stupid dossier, cost Donald Trump 22 months of his first 2 years in office, $40 million to find nothing. You could make the argument that if the FBI had have just released its investigation of the laptop, told the people it was authentic, John Brennan would not and his cohorts been able to lie to the American people that it was cooked up in Russia and that Donald Trump was complicit in that. That disclosure, that failure to disclose the true nature of that laptop, thanks to John Brennan and 51 intelligence authorities and the debate by Joe Biden and the false charges, may have affected the election.
The Steele dossier was assembled by a foreign spy and from subsources that were directly connected to Russian intelligence. The dossier was worked into the highest levels of the FBI through Bruce and Nellie Orr. James Comey and Rod Rosenstein even used the dossier to secretly and illegally spy on President Trump's campaign 3 times.
I think this is, unfortunately, a very sad and tragic example of the continued politicization of the intelligence community. I'm really shocked that, individuals who are willing to sacrifice their reputations, their credibility, their decency to continue to do Donald Trump's bidding on something that clearly is just politically based.
We wouldn't be in this big trouble about the Ukraine war and Russia had John Brennan and people like him not floated the spurious narrative that Donald Trump was working hand in glove with Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin, Russia, Russia, Russia. That colored and poisoned the whole relationship we had with Russia. It affected the Russian-Ukrainian war, and it was all a lie. And so here we are with John Brennan mad that he lost his security clearance for being a well-paid MSNBC analyst. He should be better worried, not that he lost his security clearance, that he might be indicted and go to jail. He's got a lot of culpability, both in not telling the truth, and spinning lies and being at the heart of a number of scandals that affected the history of the United States.
Many of John Brennan's crimes won't be prosecuted. They fall beyond the 5-year statute of limitations for most federal felonies. But this doesn't. It is fully prosecutable. And John Brennan deserves to be charged with these crimes.
How far can a lie go before the truth catches up? Or worse, never does? Pam Bondi says the DOJ is investigating Comey and Brennan, but real accountability? That's missing. Brennan, Obama's CIA director, allegedly lied to Congress, a crime punishable by years in prison, yet he faces no charges. Why? Because the law isn't applied equally. Remember the Hunter Biden laptop? Brennan signed a letter calling it Russian disinfo, even though the FBI knew it was real. The public was kept in the dark. This isn't just about politics. It's about whether intelligence officials abuse their power to influence an election. If lying to Congress is a crime, shouldn't it apply to everyone? Or is justice only for the powerless? What do you think? Are we a nation of laws or a nation of narratives?